What's up, guys? Welcome to Godfather Saga number 76. And in this episode, I want to basically touch on my keys to longevity. Now, before you guys hit the dislike button because of my old school headset and my crappy computer camera, I think you guys, especially the younger crowd, may find this pretty beneficial. And you may not get it now, but later on down the line, it might make a little more sense. So, hopefully I can get to you guys sooner rather than later, and I'll go over why. But first, I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of background just in case some of you don't really know too much of my history. I've been training since 1986, so it's a little over 30 years. I've been competing since 1993. Over the span of, since 1993, I've done 30 shows. Fared pretty well in placings, fared pretty well, as a natural pro. So I think I do have a little bit to offer some of you guys out there. So hopefully you guys get something out of this. So before I get into kind of the nuts and bolts to the keys to my success is in regards to my longevity, I want to touch on one story. Back in the early 90s, it was probably somewhere around 1992. I used to train at a small gym in Fremont, California named Bob's Gym. And basically, at that time, the way I was training was basically high intensity training, Dorian Yates, Mike Mincer style training. So everything was basically just all out, balls out. And basically, I was punishing myself every single workout. I mean, I would literally take every single set to failure. Often I would go beyond failure. I would do negatives. I would do hold like static holds. I would forced reps, you name it, I was doing it. So my intensity level back then, you could kind of say, I was pretty hardcore and trained like an animal. So, it's not like, today. I know if some of you guys follow me today, you look at my training like, man, he's pretty conservative, he's pretty soft, he doesn't really get after it, probably because he's an older trainer. It's so basically I've experienced, some pretty hard ass training over the years. It's not like I don't know what intensity is or I don't know what hard work is. So, anyways, getting to the story. I was in there training one day. I was doing incline dumbbell press. I believe I was doing right around the 110s, and my form wasn't. Let's just say it wasn't perfect. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely had a lot of room for improvement. And at the time, there was a gentleman that was working out next to me, and he was probably my age now. He was like in his mid 40s, and I was at the time about 22. And I remember him telling me, it wasn't, I didn't ask for his advice or anything like that. He just gave me some unsolicited advice. And he was like, man, you need to really lower the weight down and clean up that form. Otherwise you're gonna be like me when you get to be my age. And he was next to me doing seated dumbbell presses, and I don't remember what weight he was using, but his range of motion was basically like this. It was just basically just some quarter of the way. That's it, partials. And he's like, my shoulders are so bad, this is all I can really do. And he's all, I don't want to see you end up like me, when you're my age. And, of course, being that, I'm a nice guy and, I wasn't going to disrespect him at all. And, I basically said, oh, okay, just said, listen to what he had to say and nodded my head, say, yeah, okay. But in my mind, I was telling myself, you don't know shit, old man. I just had a huge ego at that time. And, with the way I trained hardcore, you got to basically kill yourself every workout, every set. In my mind, I'm just like, you don't know shit, old man. Just be quiet. So I think, I learned a valuable lesson with that story, because now that I'm his age, looking back in hindsight, I totally get and understand what he was trying to get across to me, is that, and I'm glad that I kind of, evolved over the years to ensure that I was training smart and intelligently. It took me a while to kind of tone down on intensity, but at least I really kind of honed in on form and, really was cautious in the weight room. And now here I am, 2016, at the age of soon to be 45 in 10 days, I'm still training on a very high level and still competitive with some of the best natural bodybuilders in the world. So, I think there's a lot of value in the lesson that he was trying to teach me at that time, and I think that's kind of the same thing I'm trying to teach some of you younger guys now, is that yes, we want to work hard because we do have our goals, but we also want to make sure that we're doing this for on a high level for as long as you possibly can. And so that kind of gets to some of my keys to longevity. And I think number one is just having patience and mastering patience. And you have to remember, the sport of natural bodybuilding, you know, gaining muscle as a natural bodybuilder, it's like watching paint dry. It's like watching the grass grow. It takes time to really see good quality muscle gain. So being patient is really, really important, so you don't get ahead of yourself, that you don't get too over eager, so you don't end up hurting yourself in the gym, or you don't basically when you're dieting, you don't try to push too hard to where you're, losing muscle mass, your energy goes down, your performance is not very good, your recovery is not very good. You end up, and even, mentally, burning yourself out from that. And so just understanding that, things do take time to materialize, whether you're trying to gain lean muscle mass or whether you're trying to, diet down and lose body fat. You want to basically understand that it takes time, and time is probably your biggest asset when it comes to this sport. Um, the second key for me basically is being humble and having no ego, especially in the weight room. If you're humble, no ego, you train within yourself, meaning, you're not trying to pile on the weight where your form starts to break down and you start getting aches and pains and injuries. You're going to be better off in the long run. It's kind of like, the tortoise and the hare. The hare's, going like mad trying to sprint to the finish line, but eventually that tortoise kind of just ends up passing that hare on by. So in the weight room, you basically want to make sure that you're, being pretty damn pretty damn humble, and you're not letting your ego dictate your decision making. Um, Third key is perfect form. Again, it kind of correlates to being humble. If your form is on point, it's kind of like your insurance policy for, as far as like keeping the risk of injury down. So for me, again, making sure that my form is like spot on, it just ensures, I should say, that the risk is far less than it would be if, maybe I was a little bit sloppier of form, or taking more risk by, adding more weight than I can, do with good form. So pretty important that you make sure you master the basics in the weight room and keep your exercise form, spot on. So again, I'm not saying that, not to work hard, and that you shouldn't, push yourself in the gym, but it's understanding that you need to be smart with your approach and knowing when to push and when to back off. And that's where periodization is pretty important. When you're programming your training, you have your times of, pushing hard, but then you have your times where you're backing things down, and that's so you can, basically have better long-term progress. And I wish I would have understood that a lot sooner, when I was in my early 20s, training like balls to the wall, every set to failure, just pushing myself, pretty damn hard every single workout. I was very fortunate that I didn't get injured early on. I had a little aches and pains, a couple of strains here and there, but nothing major, not until 2013 when I tore my calf. And that taught me a valuable lesson, about, again, having no ego and making sure my form is spot on, and understanding that I can't always push, my foot on the gas pedal all the way down. I have to let off the gas, put my foot on the brake from time to time. And that kind of leads me to the next um, key to longevity, and that's understanding that rest and recovery is just as important as the actual work itself. I think, our mentality as bodybuilders is that we want to make the most progress as possible. And we want to do that by pushing ourselves harder and harder, doing more work, doing more volume, um, pushing harder with our diets, pushing harder with our cardio. And we have this mentality that if we're not working as hard as we possibly can, that somehow we feel like we're pansies, we're sissies. And the thing is that, to me, you need to have discipline in this sport, and discipline to diet, discipline to make sure you're getting your cardio in, discipline to get your training in. But you also have that discipline to know when to back off and to follow through with taking your rest days and having your recovery and taking your deloads, and things like that. And that, again, that's ensuring you're having long-term success, long-term progress. It's kind of like oil change in your car, man. If you don't oil change your car regularly, you're only going to get so much life out of that car. So I'd rather, hold on to my car and be able to drive it, 300,000 miles versus only driving it, let's say 50,000 miles, because I had my foot on the damn gas the whole time. And that takes me back to an old piece of shit car I had in 1980. In 1990, I had a 1986 Camaro IROC Z, and I drove that thing so damn hard, and I didn't get hardly any gas. I didn't Not gas mileage. I didn't get gas mileage, yeah, but I didn't get any good life out of that car. Basically, that car was dead in the water after about, it was like 50, 70,000 miles, somewhere in there. I can't remember, but it was dead in the water. But now I have a Hyundai, and I know that car, as long as I oil change that baby, I'm going to get many, 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 many miles out of it. So that's kind of my mentality and my approach to training now. And if I could go back in time, it would have been my training approach back when I was a younger dude, like back in my early 20s, understanding that I do need to periodize training, and I do need to basically take those deloads, do need to have those oil changes in there. That way I can really get the most out of my training, and, you know, basically getting the most out of myself without, sitting on the sidelines or, my car breaking down. So it's pretty damn important, rest and recovery. And my last key is basically making sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, guess what? You're going to end up burning out, and you're just going to basically just give up. And trust me, being in the sport for 30 years now, I've seen people come and go, in the sport, but here I am still doing what I'm doing. And the majority of the time I've pretty much enjoyed myself. There's been times where it's been a little bit of a mental struggle, and I think the one thing that kind of led me to burning out every now and then was that I was basically, going back to what I was saying earlier, pushing too damn hard, and doing it for too long, like competing in 3 seasons in a row, 2 seasons in a row. It's really hard on the body, it's really hard on the mind, and eventually, at first when I was going through it, I was having fun, but eventually, because of the stress that I was under, the physical and mental stress started to become a chore, and I started to get wore down. And I took these 2 or 3 hiatuses from the sport, but I always came back from it ready to go again. So now I understand that I really need to make sure I'm balancing things out pretty well so I can keep enjoying what I'm doing, so it's not overly stressful. So I don't have these highs and these super lows. I just kind of keep it a constant. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better. So making sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, and also I think not over stressing, protocols. And what I mean by that is not trying to be perfect. I think you hear that word optimal so much in this sport that I think it creates a lot more stress than what it's worth. I think what you want to do is make sure you're having fun first and foremost, and then from there you could kind of make sure that protocols are kind of where they need to be, as long as they don't create more stress in your life. So that's kind of my long-winded video on longevity. Hopefully it helps somebody out there. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk soon.